If you have to call out just one thing, that made CNCF so successful, what is that single most important thing?
I have to say one only.
Yes.
I'm like torn between two, but vendor neutrality being essential to being a graduated project in CNCF, done a lot for this ecosystem.
I'm just curious, when you look back, what are the top three milestones that you want to call out?
I am so proud of this journey that the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, or the Cloud Native community, I should say, has taken in the last 10 years.
What do you think are the challenges involved in managing such a rapidly growing, huge ecosystem?
Never a dull moment, I'll tell you that. Now, can I say my runners up?
Yeah, please, please. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of The Encounter, where we talk to senior leaders from the tech industry. So today we have a very special guest, someone that I admire and I have been following for a long time. I'm excited to have Priyanka Sharma, Executive Director at the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. Priyanka, great to have you on my show.
Thank you so much for having me, Johnny. And the admiration is very mutual.
So, Priyanka, this episode is very special because Kubernetes is turning 10. And as an avid follower, enthusiast, and someone who built career around Kubernetes, this is a very special moment for not just me, but for the whole community. So, as we hit the 10th anniversary milestone, how would you reflect on its journey, from being an open source project to becoming the de facto standard? Some call it as the next Linux. So, what's your view on this?
Yeah, well, first of all, you've definitely been part of this success story. You've been covering Kubernetes since the early days. You saw something there and you shared it with the world, and now the whole world runs on Kubernetes. And I think that's why there is this comparison to Linux, right? That, hey, is Kubernetes having its Linux moment? Absolutely. I think actually a lot has happened in the last 10 years, but very recently, the latest technology trend of AI has cemented the Linux moment for Kubernetes. I say that because if you talk to anybody who is building out their deployment platforms for AI workloads, when we talk to the end user, like think Fortune 500, all of them tell me it's based on Kubernetes. When I've met interesting companies in the AI space and I'm like, how do you do your infra? And they look at me like, is that even a question? It's obviously Kubernetes. So very much feels like the Linux moment started. I wouldn't say humbly because I think Kubernetes was mighty from the start. The project began in 2014, as you know. 2016, in my opinion, was a big milestone when it was open sourced by Google and came into the Linux Foundation, and that led to the creation of CNCF, or as you know, Cloud Native Computing Foundation. And since then, I think the project has scaled so many heights, set so many records, and truly created this ethos of industry collaboration, bringing large companies that traditionally you wouldn't expect to be hanging out in the same room to work together collaboratively for good of mankind. It's amazing.
Absolutely. So, as someone who heads the CNCF and been very active in the community, when you look back in the last decade, what are the key milestones that led to the success of Kubernetes and even the CNCF? Because I have personally seen many foundations evolve, emerge, but CNCF has grown tremendously in the last decade, and it also set some kind of a precedence on how a community should be governed and run. So I'm just curious, when you look back, what are the top three milestones that you want to call out?
Sure. I am so proud of this journey that the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, or the cloud native community, I should say, has taken in the last 10 years. Kubernetes has been at the center of it, of course. I think the first milestone was, as I mentioned, the 2016 milestone of Kubernetes coming into the Linux Foundation. I think the world, I don't think it's an overstatement to say that the world would be a different place if that had not happened. I think that was a big deal. And from that time onwards, the CNCF has provided governance, guidance, support, and just help to make this Kubernetes ecosystem grow. And over time, that has meant, as you know, bringing in other projects. Today, we are 170 plus projects in addition to Kubernetes, and that started within the first year of the foundation forming. And in my mind, that was another big milestone. It was early but mighty because that took us from a single project to an ecosystem, to a way of doing things. And I think that has continued till now, where the reason cloud native and Kubernetes transcends different workloads, different eras, is because it's about how people collaborate to develop, deploy, and deliver technology in the hands of users in a sustainable, resilient, safe manner. It's a how we do things. I think when I think about the biggest milestones, a big one I would say is also like in the early days, if we look, right, when we brought in RBAC, CSI, IPv6, those were really important for Kubernetes specifically. And I think I would say latest, I'll just like, go from early days to like, well, one important one in the middle, I would say, was when we did the architectural shift towards modularity and we removed Docker shim in 1.24. And then this latest 1.30 release focuses on security, which, as you know, it's paramount and ever more important when it comes to open source because the world's built on open source. So those are just some milestones. I really cannot choose, but they are top of mind right now.
Absolutely. So, Priyanka, while Kubernetes is at the front and center of CNCF, there are many other projects. And when we look at the CNCF landscape, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
There are so many projects that contribute to this ecosystem and make Kubernetes successful and build upon the foundation.
Yeah.
So, what do you think are the challenges involved in managing such a rapidly growing and huge ecosystem?
Well, never a dull moment, I'll tell you that. I think that yes, it's a large, vibrant ecosystem, which can be overwhelming, especially the first time you look at the CNCF landscape. But what that is really telling you is that this is a place where you have guidance, but you also have choice. And I think that is at the core of why CNCF and Cloud Native has been such a successful ecosystem. It's not one stack with one option for each type of technology that rules them all, but rather a thousand flowers blooming, which I think is when open source is also shines, is when a thousand flowers bloom. And that's what is the landscape is a representation of. I think that as we move forward, we have recently inaugurated a body in CNCF called the End User Technical Advisory Board. And their role is very important because these are end users, leaders at end user organizations. Again, think Fortune 500, 5,000, who are going to provide guidance to their peers in the world out there, really, on the best practices with cloud native. And they're the people who are qualified and capable of taking on the role of building out reference architectures. And we hope with more guidance from this body, a little bit of how overwhelming the landscape is will get less.
Absolutely. I think end users contributing to the reference architecture and sharing some of the best practices on how they do it internally, that's going to be of tremendous value. So, the other aspect, Priyanka, is Kubernetes is beyond just container orchestration. Of course, it powers the cloud. It's
Yeah.
obviously the foundation of cloud native. It runs in the data center. Red Hat OpenShift is
Yeah.
tremendously successful. But what are the other places, interesting use cases that you have seen when it comes to adopting Kubernetes?
Sure. Yeah, I think the magic of Kubernetes has been its extensibility. So we started with the large web scale applications where what needed something like Kubernetes, and stateless was the name of the game. Then a few years later, we suddenly were able to do stateful workloads. Then we even went onwards to serverless. We did edge deployments, and very latest has been AI inference deployments, and even more latest. And this comes off of within a month after the keynote where I talked about this, I am seeing Kubernetes also starting to be used for AI training deployments. And so the project keeps evolving and keeps support give it it supports the needs of its users, and that's what's the strongest thing. Let's look at a few of these, right? So when we think about edge computing, in the beginning, nobody would have thought something like Kubernetes, which is for cloud, would be the right fit. But again, going back to that core fundamental thing of cloud native, is from first principles perspective, is about how we do things, how we collaborate as human beings. And the way we've done things has extended very well to edge deployments, because we now have lightweight Kubernetes distros such as K3s, which I'm sure you're aware of, that they're optimized for resource constrained edge devices. And then they make the container orchestration and the connection between the central application and then the edge device that much easier and more cloud native in how it's done. We have frameworks like KubeEdge, which are just taking over. They can support intermittent connectivity, offline operations. And that's essential, right? Because edge environments are unreliable when it comes to network conditions. Then there's also like supporting that hybrid architectures, whereas edge, cloud, everything all together, right? And that is something Kubernetes has been able to do. Actually, I was just in China lately, and so you'll hear a lot of stories from that trip on this conversation today. And I heard that majority of the electric car manufacturers there have CubeEdge on all the cars over there,
Wow.
and the satellites, they all have CubeEdge. It's like we are in mission critical devices right now. So the edge computing experience for the cloud native community has been a very successful one. Very proud of that. We can even think of serverless. Another thing that was, in the beginning, like that's the opposite of Kubernetes, is how people would say it, right? But really, it provides a robust platform for running these workloads, because ultimately we're optimizing scaling and resource utilization. That's what's happening. Knative is a framework that's built on top of Kubernetes, as you know, and it's really helped to deploy and manage event-driven functions. I actually remember so long ago, I'm not going to name the company, but I worked at an organization where we utilized Knative and a bunch of other open source stuff to start deploying serverless in the, I would say, in the earliest days when it was exciting. And that was all, we did it with Knative, we did it with Kubernetes. And so no matter what people are doing, they do it with Kubernetes. And then the latest, of course, is this AI/ML domain, right? And here, I'll tell you this: like 2 years ago, I would say, when AI/ML, well, specifically generative AI, became the hottest thing, we had already been doing things like Kubernetes on AI days at KubeCons, and there was a lot of work already happening. We had this research user group that focused very much on batch workloads and HPC, high performance compute, and how do you do it in a cloud native way. And now, when all eyes are on AI/ML, the speed with which people are coalescing towards Kubernetes has astounded even me. And I am the number one fan, I would like to say. And so, I would say about 1.5 years ago, when everything really took off, we knew OpenAI had built a lot of stuff on Kubernetes. But besides that, we heard that, oh, there are different ways to do this. It's all going to be abstracted away. Y'all are too low down the stack. And I was like, okay, that sounds great. Less to do. And then over time, turns out the Kubernetes community, it's just like starting to work, right? Like we have this dynamic resource allocation so that we can support different kinds of hardware. The AI story is really ultimately going to be a data story and a hardware story. And that's why Kubernetes is so important. So the community is working on Kubernetes enhancement proposals. There are projects out there like KCQ is a kind of a part of Kubernetes, but there's KCP. These are like creating control planes that go beyond containers. So a lot of work has started quickly to support these workloads. And most places, when it comes to inference, you see happening on Kubernetes. And then the left field thing that's happened in the last, I would say, this is as for me in my experience is as latest as the last since KubeCon Paris,
Hmm.
where we met, is that more and more people have come out of the woodwork being like, ultimately any AI ML feature is part of a larger cloud native application. So we would like to do this in a way that can prevents meltdowns, keeps the wheel sane. So let's make it work with Kubernetes. So I am seeing a lot of presentations lately of how to make, do HPC style resource allocation, but with at least connected to Kubernetes. So the batch working group and the research user group are where I've seen some great presentations. They've utilized, there's some people just if you've heard of this technology called Slurm, which is what
Right.
traditionally Slurm and HTC Condor are often used in HPC workloads, and folks are making it all work with Kubernetes. There's something going to be out open source soon. There's sunk by the create by these people called CoreWeave, which is uh, Slurm plus Kubernetes, and all kinds of innovation happening. And this is just a few options, right? Like soon we're going to look. Then when I went to China, I saw everyone's building resource allocation and scheduling on Kubernetes, and they are so fast over there. It was really impressive. So they've contributed things like KC along, like globally, everybody's joined in, but they've been part of KCP and Q, and now there's stuff happening with Karmada. Like it's just on. The game is on, and it's so exciting. And
Absolutely.
sorry, I'll just end with this. The reason I think this is happening is because over the past 10 years, Kubernetes, this community worked to support the end users, to enable their digital transformation. So now it's the de facto platform choice, and that's what the end users want to build on top of.
Fantastic. A lot of stuff that you said, I have been a part of it. I have worked with a retailer who deployed Kubernetes in 30,000 of their franchises.
Wow.
Uh, and it runs on K3s. It powers like almost every retail outlet of this large chain across the globe.
Wow.
So I can feel the excitement when you're saying. And Priyanka, I actually think Kubernetes has become the de facto control plane, be
Yes.
it virtual machines with KVM and
Mhm.
KubeVirt, of course containers with containerd,
Yeah.
and then Wasm, which is the new chip of the old block, now. So for me, Kubernetes is like the de facto control plane. Doesn't matter what you're orchestrating, it is right at the front.
100% agree with you. That's how I look at it too.
Fantastic. So uh, I can actually feel the same excitement as you, because I've been experiencing and witnessing this all along. So I have a tricky question for you. uh, so you know all of us are fans of Kubernetes gets the maximum limelight and attention, but from the CNCF ecosystem, if you have to call out three more projects that are very critical for end user success
Mhm.
and that are important for the CNCF governing board as well as the ecosystem, what are those top three projects?
Sure. So, off the bat, I will say open telemetry. Open
Hmm.
telemetry, the velocity and the amount of contributions coming from diverse organizations is amazing, is up and to the right. The adoption has been, especially the last 2 years, I would say, it's just taken off. So we're very, very proud of it. I think, I happen to have observability roots. I got involved with cloud native because I was at Open Tracing, the third project to join CNCF, which is now archived, but whatever. So it's been really exciting for me to see that finally over the years we have emerged to come together in, okay, this is a de facto standard of how to instrument your systems for logging traces, metrics, and I think they're adding some new very cool things too. So that's been really nice, and we hear from really mature end users that they rely on open telemetry for to understand their systems. As different kinds of workloads come in, the importance of open telemetry grows because the system gets more complex. I would expect OTel to keep being more and more important over time. I personally really love the Argo project for its energy and the fact that it's. I've noticed projects that come from end users. This one started with Intuit. What they have a different ethos. They are very much about solving the problem and doing it in a and doing it excellently. And so Argo, I mean, Argo is like actually four projects together, but if you look at like CI/CD things like that, Argo is a project to keep an eye on. I think they're doing really, really well. And then there's like this constellation of new ones, right? Like with KCP, Karmada, all of that. That as suddenly we're talking about new workloads in Kubernetes, they are really important in my mind right now.
Awesome. So to summarize, open telemetry because observability is so critical, and the second is Argo because CI/CD. Those pipelines matter the most to
Yes.
push workloads from staging to production.
Yep.
And finally, the new breed of workloads, or rather the projects that are enabling newer use cases, particularly federated clusters and connected clusters, multi-cluster management with projects like Karmada. So fantastic. I totally agree. Sitting outside and watching it from a distance, I couldn't agree more. So, uh, so Priyanka, what's next for Kubernetes and cloud native ecosystem? We have now hit the critical milestone of the
Yeah.
10th anniversary. What to look forward in the next decade?
I think, I couldn't be more optimistic about where we're headed. Kubernetes and cloud native in the last 10 years, it's been a victory lap four times over. And that's been amazing to be a part of. But even cooler is the fact that this ecosystem doesn't rest. We keep innovating, we keep changing. And, it's not for everybody to do that. But the doers really coalesce over here. And that's why I think the next 10, 20, 30 years will be around. And I think, we're just the fact that we went from Kubernetes is such a big star, but we've been able to bring in all these projects that we just talked about, and then so many others. Like I haven't talked about Prometheus, Envoy, Containerd, the OG new other projects. They've done this constellation of projects has really changed the world, and that will continue as more and more projects come in. The key I will go back to is about the ethos of cloud native. Collaboration is actually the secret sauce of what happens in the cloud native community. And that is what I think will bring us supporting new use cases, supporting new workloads, thinking of new ways to make software more reliable, more resilient, safer. All of that is going to happen with this collaborative community. I think the emerging trends we talked about will just keep things interesting, and we'll have problems to solve. There are challenges ahead, of course. We need to ensure some kind of standardization across, various different workloads. I think open telemetry is now successful because it's representing a standardization. We have interoperability to navigate, security compliance, all of that, right? But that's what we'll be spending our time on, so it'll be fun. And our goal really is to just keep bringing together these amazing people, the brightest minds in the ecosystem, whether it's through our events, whether it's through, by reaching them through conversations like these, whether it's simply in the GitHub repos, so that everybody just builds better, bigger together.
Absolutely. One more tricky question coming your way.
Sure.
So, Priyanka, open source existed before Kubernetes.
Of course.
Foundations existed before Kubernetes. Some
Yes.
of them have been successful, some of them haven't been so successful. But CNCF has set some kind of a precedence and some kind of a standard on how to govern open source projects just because of its success that we have seen. So, if you have to call out just one thing, that made CNCF so successful when compared to other projects, other governing bodies, other foundations, what is that single most important thing?
I have to say one only. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, because I'm like torn between two, but I think
Go ahead.
I think um, vendor neutrality being essential to being a graduated project, and CNCF has done a lot for this ecosystem. Now, can I say my
Absolutely.
runners up?
Yeah, yeah, please, please.
So I think so. First in my mind is the vendor neutrality. The second is the choice of licenses has been, I think, very pragmatic, with MIT Apache 2 being the favored licenses, because again, that is what's good when multiple vendors collaborate. That's what's good when multiple, like, geos, people from everywhere collaborate. And then the third is obviously the people. It's always comes back to the people, these hardworking folks. We've just provided some scaffolding, just some encouragement, and then they've done everything right.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you something that I have noticed. I think CNCF is the only community where you see competing companies going on stage together, shaking hands, collaborating and announcing a project and making it a success. Like where else can you see VMware and Red Hat co-presenting and driving a project together,
Right?
right?
It's amazing.
And where else can you see Microsoft and AWS embracing each other's work and proudly talk about it? Right? I have seen Carpenter. Microsoft is consuming Carpenter that came out of AWS, and AWS is consuming projects that came from other cloud providers. So that's a very, very healthy ecosystem and environment where people cooperate and compete at a very different plane. I think that's the secret sauce of cloud native computing ecosystem. I mean,
I
that's my observation.
Absolutely. Yeah, I 100% agree with you. It's because no matter who put the project in the first place, this is a neutral home. So they can trust to rely on a project that may have come from any other company. And I think it's an honor that we have achieved that level of trust in this ecosystem and in society. And I think it is the reason why we're able to bring be like, up the ante when it comes to collaboration.
Absolutely. I have a runner up as well, from my
Yeah,
perspective. So
tell
let
me.
me share that. So,
Yes.
what I absolutely like about CNCF is the accessibility of people. you
Mm.
know, from Brendan Burns, who created one of the co-creators of Kubernetes, to Joe Beda, to Craig McLuckie, to Kelsey Hightower, to any celebrity,
Yeah.
who is like the well-known, renowned god of Kubernetes, is just one Slack message away.
Absolutely. Yeah, people are very open, people are very giving. And I think we should give a shout out to someone who created this environment, who which is Dan Khan. I think
Totally.
he worked tirelessly behind the scenes to prioritize pulling people in, and a lot of his efforts were around diversity, equity, and inclusion. I was one of the beneficiaries of that, where it's like, you don't even you're not I didn't even need to knock, and people would know that I'm available, I'm here to help, and pull me in. And if I raised my hand, I was noticed, people gave me opportunities. And it's because of this enthusiasm around DEI, around like policies around DEI that were set up. And I think Dan was channeling the heart and soul of the creators of Kubernetes, of all the people here. We want to live like this. We want to bring people in, and that is the most top secret sauce of all.
Absolutely. I had the privilege of interacting and learning from Dan. He was an amazing person. I think I met him in the first 3 or 4 KubeCons, and he was as accessible as anyone else.
Yeah,
So phenomenal person.
I agree.
So switching gears, something close to your heart, my heart, KubeCon.
Yep, our favorite time.
Absolutely. So KubeCon is coming to India, and along with Kubernetes, KubeCon is also celebrating one of its major milestones as it is spreading its wings to other countries and continents.
Yeah.
So. Tell us about KubeCon India and what are your plans? I know you're from India, so how excited are you about KubeCon India?
Oh, I am so excited. I'm so excited that I got so involved in how we will design our flyers. It's just such a, um, I think, milestone for me personally to see the conference coming to India. Uh, and I was talking to some board members the other day, and they really said it in a very wise way, which is that the Indian ecosystem has built itself up, has put in the work, has showed up, contributed, done so much. And, time zones have not been in their favor usually. And, but, it's that can do attitude. And so many of our critical contributors come from India, who are in India. And so India has earned its place in this top the top four places where we go have a KubeCon. You think of so many people who are based in India. You think of Nikita, who's a co-chair. You think of Divya, who's done so many cool things. And these people, they roll up their sleeves, they do hard work, and that is why I think it's great that we can go to India, meet more people, hopefully find more such talent, and pull them in more and more, and be there to just thank them for all the work that they've done.
Absolutely, we are the developer nation,
Yeah.
and you have no idea how many people show up for community meetups that we hold on weekends. And KCDs are a huge success. Kubernetes community days that
Yes.
happened in Pune and Bangalore and other places. So I'm personally very excited about KubeCon India because there's going to be one massive technology event that's
Yeah.
coming to this nation. So I'm already contributing and talking to the organizers and see what we can do there. So on that high note, I want to thank you for taking time and participating in this discussion. We just share the excitement about Kubernetes and the rapid growth of this vibrant ecosystem. So thanks again, and we will again connect maybe after KubeCon India to do another checkpoint and have some more follow-up discussions.
Absolutely. I had a great conversation with you. I love talking to a fellow enthusiast, fellow fan of the cloud native ecosystem, and also someone who's a doer. You have done so much in this community. So thank you for all your efforts, and absolutely looking forward to talking soon.
Absolutely, thank you.